that mighty protector of men, meant to hold the monster till its life leapt out, knowing the fiend was no use to anyone in Denmark. All of Beowulf's band had jumped from their beds, ancestral swords raised and ready, determined to protect their prince if they could. Their courage was great, but all wasted. They could hack at Grendel from every side, trying to open a path for his evil soul. But their points could not hurt him. The sharpest and hardest iron could not scratch at his skin, for that sin-stained demon had bewitched all men's weapons, laid spells that blunted every mortal man's blade. And yet his time had come, his days were over, his death near. Down to hell he would go, swept groaning and helpless to the waiting hands of still worse fiends. Now he discovered, once an afflicter of men, tormentor of their days, what it meant to feud with Almighty God. Grendel saw that his strength was deserting him, his claws bound fast. Hygelac's brave follower tearing at his hands. The monster's hatred rose higher, but his power had gone. He twisted in pain, and the bleeding sinews deep in his shoulder snapped. Muscle and bone split and broke. The battle was over. Beowulf had been granted new glory. Grendel escaped, but wounded as he was, could flee to his den, his miserable hole at the bottom of the marsh, only to die, to wait for the end of his days. And after that bloody combat, the Danes laughed with delight. He who had come to them from across the sea, bold and strong-minded, had driven affliction off, purged Heorot clean. He was happy now. With that night's fierce work, the Danes had been served as he'd boasted he'd served them. Beowulf, a prince of the Geats, had killed Grendel, ended the grief, the sorrow, the suffering, forced on Hrothgar's helpless people by a bloodthirsty fiend. No Dane doubted the victory, for the proof, hanging high from the rafters where Beowulf had hung it, was the monster's arm, claw, and shoulder, and all. And then, in the morning, crowds surrounded Heorot, warriors coming to that hall from faraway lands, princes and leaders of men, hurrying to behold the monster's great staggering tracks. They gaped with no sense of sorrow, felt no regret for his suffering, went tracing his bloody footprints, his beaten and lonely flight, to the edge of a lake, where he dragged his corpse-like way, doomed and already weary of his vanishing life. The water was bloody, steaming and boiling, in horrible pounding waves, heat sucked from his magic veins, but the swirling surf had covered his death, hidden deep in murky darkness, his miserable end, as hell opened to receive him. Then old and young rejoiced, turned back from that happy pilgrimage, mounted their hard-hooved horses, high-sprinted stallions, and rode them slowly towards Heorot again, retelling Beowulf's bravery as they jogged along, and over they swore that nowhere on earth, or under the spreading sky, or between the seas, neither south nor north, was there a warrior worthier to rule over men. But no one meant Beowulf's praise to belittle Hrothgar, their kind and gracious king. Grendel's mother, in grief of her son, next attacks Heorot, and in her dripping claws she catches off one of Hrothgar's closest friends. The monster also carries off Grendel's arm, which Beowulf had hung high from the rafters. Beowulf is awakened and called for again. In one of the most famous verses in this epic, the old king describes where Grendel and his mother live.